So we'll continue our readings I'll read a few suttas from the Anguttara Nikaya, and then follow with some reflections from Ajahn Chah. So this first sutta from the Book of the Tens is Sutta 58, called Roots. Bhikkhus, wanderers of other sects may ask you, in what, friends, are all things rooted? Through what do they come into being? From what do they originate? Upon what do they converge? By what are they headed? What exercises authority over them? What is their supervisor? What is their core? In what do they culminate? What is their consummation? If you were asked thus, how would you answer them? And this is very similar to one take on one of these famous suttas. There's a note here. This is an expanded parallel based on Anguttara 8's Sutta 83. Bhante, our teachings are rooted in the Blessed One. Guided by the Blessed One, take recourse in the Blessed One. It would be good if the Blessed One would clear up the meaning of this statement. Having heard it from him, the bhikkhus will retain it in mind. Then listen, bhikkhus, and attend closely. I will speak. Yes, Bhante, those bhikkhus replied. The Blessed One said this: Bhikkhus, if wanderers of other sects should ask you these things, you should answer them as follows. Friends, all things are rooted in desire. They come into being through attention. They originate from contact. They converge upon feeling. They are headed by concentration. Mindfulness exercises authority over them. Wisdom is their supervisor. Liberation is their core. They culminate in the deathless. Their consummation is nibbana. If you are asked thus, bhikkhus, it is in such a way that you should answer those wanderers of other sects. So I'll read that one more time. 1, all things are rooted in desire. 2, they come into being through attention. 3, they originate from contact. 4, they converge upon feeling. 5, they are headed by concentration. 6, mindfulness exercises authority over them. 7, wisdom is their supervisor. 8, liberation is their core. 9, they culminate in the deathless. 10, their consummation is nibbana. The next sutta is Sutta 59, going forth. Therefore, bhikkhus, you should train yourselves thus. Our minds will be strengthened in accordance with the spirit of our going forth, and arisen bad, unwholesome qualities will not obsess our minds. Our minds will be strengthened in the perception of impermanence. Our minds will be strengthened in the perception of non-self. Our minds will be strengthened in the perception of unattractiveness. Our minds will be strengthened in the perception of danger. We will know the even and uneven ways of the world, and our minds will be strengthened in this perception. We will know the coming into being and extermination of the world, and our minds will be strengthened in this perception. We will know the origination and passing away of the world, and our minds will be strengthened in this perception. Our minds will be strengthened in the perception of abandoning. Our minds will be strengthened in the perception of dispassion. Our minds will be strengthened in the perception of cessation. It is in such a way that you should train yourselves. When a bhikkhu's mind has been strengthened in accordance with the spirit of his going forth, and arisen bad, unwholesome qualities do not obsess his mind, then his mind has been strengthened in the perception of impermanence. When his mind has been strengthened in the perception of all these different perceptions, ending with the perception of cessation, one of two fruits is to be expected for him, either final knowledge in this very life, or, if there is a residue remaining, the state of the non-returner. And then the last sutta I'll read today is a very famous sutta called the Girimananda Sutta, Sutta 60, the Book of the Tens. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Now on that occasion, the Venerable Girimananda was sick, afflicted, and gravely ill. Then the Venerable Ananda approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side, and said to him, Bhante, the Venerable Girimananda is sick, afflicted, and gravely ill. It would be good if the Blessed One would visit him out of compassion. If, Ananda, you visit the Bhikkhu Girimananda and speak to him about 10 perceptions, it is possible that on hearing about them, his affliction will immediately subside. What are the 10? 1. The perception of impermanence. 2. The perception of non-self. 3. The perception of unattractiveness. 4. The perception of danger. 5. The perception of abandoning. 6. The perception of dispassion. 7. The perception of cessation. 8. The perception of non-delight in the entire world. 9. The perception of impermanence in all conditioned phenomena. And 10. Mindfulness of breathing. What, Ananda, is the perception of impermanence? Here, having gone to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty hut, a bhikkhu reflects thus. Form is impermanent, feeling is impermanent, perception is impermanent, volitional activities are impermanent, consciousness is impermanent. Thus he dwells contemplating impermanence in these 5 aggregates subject to clinging. This is called the perception of impermanence. And what, Ananda, is the perception of non-self? Here, having gone to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty hut, a bhikkhu reflects thus. The eye is non-self, forms are non-self, the ear is non-self, and sounds are non-self. The nose is non-self, odors are non-self. The tongue is non-self, and tastes are non-self. The body is non-self, tactile objects are non-self. The mind is not self, and mental phenomena are not self. Thus he dwells contemplating not self in these 6 internal and external sense bases. This is called the perception of not self. And what, Ananda, is the perception of unattractiveness? Here a bhikkhu reviews this very body upward from the soles of the feet and downward from the tips of the hairs on top of the head. Enclosed in skin is full of many kinds of impurities. There are in this body hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, pleura, spleen, lungs, intestines, mesentery, stomach, excrement, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, grease, saliva, snot, fluid of the joints, and urine. Thus he dwells contemplating unattractiveness in this body. This is called the perception of unattractiveness. And what, Ananda, is the perception of danger? Here, having gone to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty hut, a bhikkhu reflects thus. This body is the source of much pain and danger. For all sorts of afflictions to arise in this body, that is, eye disease, disease of the inner ear, nose disease, tongue disease, body disease, head disease, disease of the external ear, mouth disease, tooth disease, cough, asthma, cataract, pyrexia, fever, stomach ache, fainting, dysentery, gripes, I'm not sure what that is, cholera, leprosy, boils, eczema, tuberculosis, epilepsy, ringworm, itch, scab, chickenpox, scabies, hemorrhage, diabetes, hemorrhoids, cancer, fistula, illness originating from bile, phlegm, wind, or their combination, illnesses produced by change of climate, illnesses produced by careless behavior, illnesses produced by assault, or illnesses produced as the result of kama, and cold, heat, hunger, thirst, defecation, and urination. Thus he dwells contemplating danger in this body. This is called the perception of danger. And what, Ananda, is the perception of abandoning? Here, a bhikkhu does not tolerate an arisen sensual thought. He abandons it, dispels it, terminates it, and obliterates it. He does not tolerate an arisen thought of ill will or an arisen thought of harming or bad unwholesome states whenever they arise. He abandons them, dispels them, terminates them, and obliterates them. This is called the perception of abandoning. And what, Ananda, is the perception of dispassion? Here, having gone to the forest, to the root of a tree, or to an empty hut, a bhikkhu reflects thus. This is peaceful, this is sublime, that is, the stilling of all activities, the relinquishment of all acquisitions, the destruction of craving, dispassion, nibbana. This is called the perception of dispassion. And what, Ananda, is the perception of cessation? Here, having gone to the forest, to the root of a tree, or to an empty hut, a bhikkhu reflects thus. This is peaceful, this is sublime, that is, the the stilling of all activities, the relinquishment of all acquisitions, the destruction of craving, cessation, nibbana. This is called the perception of cessation. And what, Ananda, is the perception of non-delight in the entire world? Here, a bhikkhu refrains from any engagement in clinging, mental standpoints, adherences, and underlying tendencies in regard to the world, abandoning them without clinging to them. This is called the perception of non-delight in the entire world. And what, Ananda, is the perception of impermanence in all conditioned phenomena? Here, a bhikkhu is repelled, humiliated, and disgusted by all conditioned phenomenon. This is called the perception of impermanence in all conditioned phenomena. There's a note on that. I think this is this translation: repelled, humiliated, and disgusted. Sometimes Bhikkhu Bodhi uses these kind of literal translations, but disenchantment is also possible, for he becomes disenchanted with all conditioned phenomenon. And what, Ananda, is mindfulness of breathing? Here a bhikkhu, having gone to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty hut, sits down, having folded his legs crosswise, straightened his body, and established mindfulness in front of him. Just mindful he breathes in, mindful he breathes out. Breathing in long, he knows, I breathe in long. Or breathing out long, he knows, I breathe out long. Breathing in short, he knows, I breathe in short. Or breathing out short, he knows, I breathe out short. He trains thus: experiencing the whole body, I will breathe in. He trains thus: experiencing the whole body, I will breathe out. He trains thus: tranquilizing the bodily activity, I will breathe in. He trains thus: tranquilizing the bodily activity, I will breathe out. He trains thus: experiencing rapture, I will breathe in. He trains thus: experiencing rapture, I will breathe out. He trains thus: experiencing happiness, I will breathe in. He trains thus: experiencing happiness, I will breathe out. He trains thus: experiencing the mental activity, I will breathe in. He trains thus: experiencing the mental activity, I will breathe out. He trains thus: tranquilizing the mental activity, I will breathe in. He trains thus: tranquilizing the mental activity, I will breathe out. He trains thus: experiencing the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus: experiencing the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus: gladdening the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus: gladdening the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus: concentrating the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus: concentrating the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus: liberating the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus: liberating the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus: contemplating impermanence, I will breathe in. He trains thus: contemplating impermanence, I will breathe out. He trains thus: contemplating fading away, I will breathe in. He trains thus: contemplating fading away, I will breathe out. He trains thus: contemplating cessation, I will breathe in. He trains thus: contemplating cessation, I will breathe out. He trains thus: contemplating relinquishment, I will breathe in. He trains thus: contemplating relinquishment, I will breathe out. This is called mindfulness of breathing. And that I quite like this particular one. And what, Ananda, is the perception of non-delight in the entire world? Here a bhikkhu refrains from any engagement in clinging, mental standpoints, adherences, and underlying tendencies in regard to the world. So based on our character type or our conditioning, like I think about, we can get in arguments about things like politics and stuff, and this particular practice can help us to, or even not just politics, but we maybe in our tradition we're doing certain practices and we might feel like we're better than other traditions, or we might feel like taking up certain practices and ways of practicing Dhamma, we might be better than others. Then this actually, non-delight in the entire world, refrains from any engagement in clinging, mental standpoints and adherences and underlying tendencies in regard to the world, abandoning them without clinging to them. So this is a really, really important one, I think. It's it's a sense of non-contention, not contending with anybody in the world. If, Ananda, you visit the bhikkhu Girimananda and speak to him about these 10 perceptions, it is possible that on hearing about them, he will immediately recover from his affliction. Then, when the Venerable Ananda had learned these 10 perceptions from the Blessed One, he went to the Venerable Girimananda and spoke to him about them. When the Venerable Girimananda heard about these 10 perceptions, his affliction immediately subsided. The Venerable Girimananda recovered from that affliction, and that is how he was cured of his affliction. And then I'll read from Ajahn Chah, a few reflections from a still forest pool. And again, these are short teachings, short reflections taken from Ajahn Chah's teachings, compilation originally edited and translated by Jack Cornfield and Paul Breiter. This one is called Follow Your Teacher. As you grow in Dhamma, you should have a teacher to instruct and advise you. The matter of concentrating the mind, of samadhi, is much misunderstood. Phenomena occur in meditation that otherwise do not normally arise. When this happens, a teacher's guidance is crucial, especially in those areas in which you have wrong understanding. Often where he corrects you will be just where you thought you were right. In the complexity of your thinking, one view may obscure the other and you get fooled. Respect your teacher and follow the rules or system of practice. If the teacher says to do something, do it. If he says to desist, desist. This allows you to make an honest effort and leads to making knowledge and vision manifest in your mind. If you do as I am saying, you will see and know. True teachers speak only of the difficult practice of giving up or getting rid of the self. Whatever may happen, do not abandon the teacher. Let them guide you, because it's easy to forget the path. Alas, few who study Buddhism really want to practice. I certainly urge them to practice, but some people can only study in a logical way. Few are willing to die and be born again free. I feel sorry for the rest. This is called Trust Your Heart. In the practice of Dhamma, there are many methods. If you know their point, they will not lead you astray. However, if you are a practitioner who does not properly respect virtue in a collected mind, you will not succeed because you are bypassing the path followed by the great forest masters of the past. Do not disregard these basics. If you wish to practice, you should establish virtue, concentration, and wisdom in your mind and aspire to the 3 gems, Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Stop all activity, be an honest person, and go to it. Although various things deceive you time after time, if you are aware of them, you will eventually be able to drop them. The same old person comes telling the same old lies. If you know it, you need not believe them. But it takes a long time before you know. Our habits are ever striving to deceive. When I had been practicing for only 2 or 3 years, I still could not trust myself. But after I had experienced much, I learned to trust my own heart. When you have this deep understanding, whatever occurs, you can let it occur, and all things will pass on and be quelled. You'll reach a point where the heart tells itself what to do. It's constantly prodding, constantly mindful. Your only concern need be to continue contemplating. This one's called Why Do You Practice? A group of travelers came to visit Ajahn Chah with 3 elegant questions. Why do you practice? How do you practice? What is the result of your practice? They were sent as a delegation by a European religious organization to ask these questions to a series of great masters throughout Asia. Ajahn Chah closed his eyes, waited, and then answered with 3 questions of his own. Why do you eat? How do you eat? How do you feel after you have eaten well? Then he laughed. Later he explained that we already understand that teaching has to direct students back to their own inner wisdom, to their own natural Dhamma. Therefore, he had reflected the search of these men throughout Asia back to the greater search within. This one's called Let the Tree Grow. The Buddha taught that with things that come about of their own, once you have done your work, you can leave the results to nature, to the power of your accumulated kamma. Yet your exertion of effort should not cease. Whether the fruit of wisdom comes quickly or slowly, you cannot force it, just as you cannot force the growth of a tree you have planted. The tree has its own pace. Your job is to dig a hole, water and fertilize it, and protect it from insects. That much is your affair, a matter of faith. But the way the tree grows is up to the tree. If you practice like this, you can be sure all will be well, and your plant will grow. Thus you must understand the difference between your work and the plant's work. Leave the plant's business to the plant, and be responsible for your own. If the mind does not know what it needs to do, it will try to force the plant to grow and flower and give fruit in one day. This is wrong view, a major cause of suffering. Just practice in the right direction and leave the rest to your karma. Then, whether it takes 1 or 100 or 1,000 lifetimes, your practice will be at peace. Too much of a good thing. When Ajahn Chah arrived at a new American meditation center, the many Western students there were quickly charmed and impressed by his teaching. I believe this was at IMS. He was clear and direct, yet loving and humorous as he poked fun at people's fears and attachments. It was exciting to have such a skillful and famous master visit. The new stories, golden-robed monks, and fresh expressions of Dhamma were all wonderful. Please do not go as soon as you planned. Do try to stay a long time, the students requested. We are so happy to have you. Ajahn Chah smiled. Of course, things are nice when they are new, but if I stay and teach and make you work, you'll get tired of me, won't you? How is your practice when the excitement wears off? You'd be bored with me before long. How does this restless, wanting mind stop? Who can teach you that? There, only can you learn the real Dhamma. This one's called virtue. There are 2 levels of practice. The first is the foundation, the development of precepts, or virtue, or morality in order to bring happiness, comfort, and harmony among people. The second, more intensive and unconcerned with comfort, is the practice of Buddha Dhamma, directed solely toward awakening, toward the liberation of the heart. This liberation is the source of wisdom and compassion, and the true reason for the Buddha's teaching. Understanding these 2 levels is the basis for true practice. Virtue and morality are the mother and father of the Dhamma growing within us, providing it with a proper nourishment and direction. Virtue is the basis for a harmonious world in which people can live truly as human beings, not animals. Developing virtue is at the heart of our practice. It is very simple. Keep the training precepts. Do not kill, steal, lie, commit sexual misdeeds, or take intoxicants that make you heedless. Cultivate compassion and a reverence for all life. Take care with your goods, your possessions, your actions, your speech. Use virtue to make your life simple and pure. With virtue as a basis for everything you do, your mind will become kind, clear, and quiet. Meditation will grow easily in this soil. The Buddha said, refrain from what is bad, do good, and purify the heart. Our practice, then, is to get rid of what is worthless and keep what is valuable. Do you still have anything bad or unskillful in your heart? Of course. So why not clean house? As true practice, this getting rid of bad and cultivating good is fine, but limited. Finally, we must step over and beyond both good and bad. In the end, there is a freedom that includes all, and a desirelessness from which love and wisdom naturally flow. Right effort and virtue are not a question of what you do outwardly, but of constant inner awareness and restraint. Thus, charity, if given with good intention, can bring happiness to oneself and others, but virtue must be the root of this charity for it to be pure. When those who do not understand the Dhamma act improperly, they look left and right to make sure no one is looking. How foolish! The Buddha, the Dhamma, our Kamma are always watching. Do you think the Buddha cannot see that far? We never really get away with anything. Take care of your virtue as a gardener takes care of trees. Do not be attached to big and small, important and unimportant. Some people want shortcuts. They say, forget concentration, we'll go straight to insight. Forget virtue, we'll start with concentration. We have so many excuses for our attachments. We must start right here, where we are, directly and simply. When the first 2 steps, virtue and right views, have been completed, then the 3rd step, uprooting defilement, will naturally occur without deliberation. When light is produced, we no longer worry about getting rid of darkness, nor do we wonder where the darkness has gone. We just know that there is light. Following the precepts has 3 levels. The first is to undertake them as training rules given to us by our teachers. The second arises when we undertake and abide in them by ourselves. But for those at the highest level, the noble ones, it is not even necessary to think of precepts of right or wrong. This true virtue comes from the wisdom that knows the Four Noble Truths in the heart and acts from this understanding. And I'll end with this, just called What is Natural? Claiming they want their practice to be natural, some people complain that this way of life does not fit their nature. Nature is the tree in the forest. But if you build a house, it's no longer natural, is it? Yet, if you learn to use the tree, making wood and building a house, it has more value to you. Or perhaps the dog is natural, running here and there, following its nose. Throw food to dogs and they rush to it, fighting each other. Is that what you want to be like? The true meaning of natural can be discovered with our discipline and practice. This natural is beyond our habits, our conditioning, our fears. If the human mind is left to so-called natural impulses, untrained, it is full of greed, hatred, and delusion and suffers accordingly. Yet through practice, we can allow our wisdom and love to grow naturally until it blossoms in any surroundings.